Hello everyone. This is just going to be a quick informal video. I wanted to just express my feelings about the changes and the new build that I think is the best for Cassante after the 13.21 changes. I just wanted to make a video explaining everything because obviously my last two videos kind of didn't age too well. I still think a lot of the points I made were valid in the videos, but it doesn't really matter. Um, Anyway, I wanted to just come on and say what the best builds are for Cassante, and yeah, we'll get into that. So, uh, the new starting items, I used to like building Ruby Crystal or Cloth Armor start, depending on the matchup, but I think the shield value is just way too big now. I think starting a Cloth Armor or Ruby Crystal is kind of not as good anymore. So I think about 99% of the time you are going to want to go Iceborn Gauntlet as your rush mythic. And let me explain why. Iceborn Gauntlet is an insane item that just allows you to constantly stick onto your target. It offers way too much value, and I didn't actually realize how strong it was on Cassante until recently. Obviously, I knew it was very strong, but I had a game where I was against an Ornn and I built Jacques Show, and I had a good lead on Ornn. And after I built Jacques Show, I could not push my lead any further. And Ornn ended up being a monster that game. So, what Gauntlet guarantees is after you finish this item, you are guaranteed to kill your opponent if they screw up, if you get your combos off correctly. Jacques Show does not offer that same amount of kill pressure and snowballing that Gauntlet does. So I think Gauntlet is going to be your first choice, always, even into most AP matchups. Um, and I'll get into that. So the only time I would ever build Jacques Show would be into heavy melee comps, heavy AP comps, because Gauntlet is good for sticking to people and running them down. But if their top laner is like a Gwen or a Tahm Kench, or their jungle is like a Rammus, and their mid laner is like a Yasuo or a Diana, they can't really run away from you. They can, but they don't have a lot of tools to escape. So getting Iceborn wouldn't be the most optimal. It would still be strong, but I think Jacques Show in that regard would be good because you're guaranteed to get a good drain. And if the top laner is like Tahm Kench, obviously it's going to be a little bit annoying to deal with him. So your goal is to just be a little bit more tanky and is to scale. Because if you try killing him, I don't know, Tahm Kench is just kind of a weird champion. Interesting example. But my point is, in team fights where the enemy team is heavy melee and heavy AP, Jacques will do you much more favors with the guaranteed getting a good drain and the magic resist. So, after you get Gauntlet, I theory crafted with a lot of health items second, and I still think the best choice item is Gargoyles. Even after the HP cap changes, they hotfixed it back to 1600. Um, Gargoyle still is an insanely strong item, but there is some things you do need to keep in mind. Most of the time, you want to go Thornmail or Randuins or some other HP item second, if it's possible. So you really want to look out for healers. Does the enemy team have a lot of healers? Is the enemy top an Olaf? Is their mid laner an auto attack based champion? Is their jungler AD? Things I look out for when I want to build Gargoyles, Thornmail, Randuins is what their composition is. So if they're heavy healing, I will go into a Thornmail second. If they are heavy auto attacks and I'm against a Yone, for example, I'll grab a Randuins because the critical strike reduction and the wardens provides insane value. And then I'll build into a Gargoyle second. However, most of the time in my matches, I will find out that their top jungle mid ADC are all very mixed damage. And it's 2 AD, 2 AP, it's a top is AD, jungle is magic, and then mid is magic. So sometimes I want to go gargoyles second because building double armor will be very inefficient against the double magic resist. So I think Iceborn and then gargoyles is very consistent. But if there are auto attackers, then you can go randuins, especially look out for the critical strike, and they have a lot of healing, go for thornmail. Now sometimes you need to know when to complete thornmail or not, because sitting on bramble vest is also insanely valuable. Sometimes you don't even need to complete thornmail until after. I like to go Iceborn and then sit on a bramble vest, for example if I'm into Olaf or Renekton, and then if they have lots of AP, if I'm against a Renekton and their jungle is like Talia and their mid laner is a Vex, I will go Gauntlet, I'll go Bramble, sit on that Bramble, go Iceborn, and then I will complete my Gargoyle. And so I want to talk about Anathemas and Sunfire really quickly. And it is that Iceborn into Anathemas it's not as common as these three options. I think these two are the most popular, Gargoyles, Thornmail. Randuins is a little bit niche, and then Anathemas, Sunfire are the most I would stay away from, and I'll tell you why. So Anathemas is a really nice item. Obviously, you don't want to go it every single game. I like to go it into a very fed composition. So, for example, if the top laner is AD and their jungler is a solo AP and the rest of their team is AD, I like to grab Anathemas and put it on their solo AP champion. And what that enables is I now take 30% reduced damage from their AP carry because they're very ahead. Or, yeah, it's very strong into a snowballing AP carry like Talia or Fiddlesticks. I just put Anathemas on them, and now they do 30% less damage to me, and now I can just stack armor. It's really nice item. But most of the time, they will have 2 AP, 2 AD, and it won't be the most efficient. But if you notice that the enemy composition has one outlier where they have 4 of a damage type or 3 of a damage type, and the one outcast that doesn't do that damage type is starting to get fed, like a 7 and 2 Fiddlesticks, and everyone else is like 1 kill, then yeah, put Anathemas on Fiddlesticks, and then just start stacking armor, since everyone else is AD, or is attack based. Now I want to get into Sunfire really quickly, and I really do not like Sunfire. And I tried to push this item first, second, third many times, but what I've come to realize is that Sunfire is not an efficient item on Cassante. I'll tell you why. On other tanks like Ornn and Sion, where they kind of just walk around like a slow moving wall, and they kind of just like get in the way of others, they obviously move across a lot of targets. But with Cassante, he's constantly moving around and he prefers isolated fights. Cassante does not want 5 people hitting him. Cassante wants to break down the enemy composition, move them around, and isolate a target and knock them away. Cassante isn't like Sion, Cho'Gath, or Ornn, where they get massive amounts of innate HP from their kits, which enables Sunfire damage even more. Cassante doesn't have any of that. So his value that he gets from Sunfire is really inconsistent, and I do not like building it second. It's just, I've built this item, and after like 10 or 15 minutes, I find it only does 1,000, 1,200 damage, and then when I see Ornn build it, he does like 3,000 damage and like in the same amount of time. So it's just, Sunfire is not as consistent as an item like Thornmail. So yeah, unless the enemy composition is like insanely melee, I think Sunfire is great. But if you notice that the enemy comp is very ranged, they're not tend to dogpile on you, then I would stay away from Sunfire. And most of the time in my games, people do not lock more than 3 melee champions, so this is why you tend to see me not build Sunfire often. Now I'll get into the third item, or situational items, late game. So obviously Jacques shows situational item if they have enemy lots of AP damage and they're very melee. Jacques shows a good option. Gargoyles is a good third item if you built thorn or randuins second. Force of Nature is a great option. I put it on B tier for my tier list, which is a little bit outdated. I might have to update it. But I believe Force of Nature is a good A tier magic resist option, as well as Spirit Visage if you have a enchanter on your team. Frozen Heart is good. Chem Tank if you need a little bit of engage, but honestly, Chem Tank is really just not the best item right now. Knight's Vow, very solid item, very cheap. If you have a 13 and 1 Zeri and you are 2 and 5, your entire goal in the game is to just protect your 13 and 1 Zeri. And honestly, you can go Gauntlet, Gargoyle, and then just go straight into Knight's Vow if you guys are already team fighting. And just keep your Zeri alive because that is your only goal. You are a peeler that game, you are not a carry, you cannot kill unless you see them massively screw up. But if it comes to a point where you're 2 and 5 in a game and you have a 13 and 1 Zeri, just go Knight's Vow. It's insanely strong. Basically, you shield your Zeri, and you take 15% of damage that she takes, and I think it goes up to 20 or 25% if they're below 30% HP. So yeah, it's just an insanely strong item for how much it costs, and it just allows you to play a more defensive take on Cassante. Abyssal Mask, also solid MR option if they have lots of magic dealers, but be careful for building this item when your team does not have too much magic damage dealers. What I mean by this is some people will go Abyssal Mask if they have like 5 AD, and it's just terrible. Because you are taking away the enemy magic resist, and since Cassante doesn't do too much magic damage, you are kind of relying on your team to do the magic damage for you. So I would only grab Abyssal Mask if you have a fed or a hyper fed solo AP champion or 2 or more AP dealers. If you have a solo AP on your team and they aren't really doing too much, I would just opt for a Force of Nature or a Spirit Visage. If you have an Enchanter, of course, Visage is a good option. And Steric's Gauge is a really nice last option, 6th item. If you're against like a Darius or Garen or literally just any composition, you get one shield, or you get a shield on your E, and then if you drop down, you can get your Gargoyles, and if you drop even lower, you can E again, you drop again, you get a Steric shield. There's just so many shields now, the enemy is gonna lose their mind. I think, yeah, it's just protects you from all out, on top of the Gargoyle shield, it's really strong. So yeah, just a quick update on his itemization. I think this is, it hasn't really changed too much, but yeah, I think this is a good idea of what to be building. Obviously for boots, play steel caps or mercury treads. I don't think Cassante receives much value from Ionians because his Q cooldown isn't affected by ability haste, and I think it isn't as crazy of a stat on him like Jarvan or Riven might like ability haste. Cassante doesn't scale too well with ability haste, which is why sometimes if you see me build Jacques Show, I will go double Ruby Crystal instead of a Kindle Gem because Cassante just doesn't benefit not as much as other champions. It is good on him, but it's just not as efficient. His W also gets reset, and yeah, that's why. Swifties is also good if they have a lot of slowing, and yeah, that's about what I go. Oh yeah, and one more thing, I'll touch on my runes. Where is it? Okay. So here's my Grasp page. Grasp of the Undying, very solid. You can trade Demolish for Shield Bash if you're against a lane where you think where you're positive you're not really going to be touching their tower. So this could be implemented for lanes like Fiora or Fiora lane, any lane bully like Kennen, Kale maybe, where you're not really going to touch their tower, because if you touch their tower, like you're already in danger, sort of. So yeah, Shield Bash just gives you that extra little bit of damage in lane, also more resistances when you have the shield active, and then more resistance during your shield active, more damage on your Q. Really nice. Shield Bash is nice to trade off if you won't touch their tower. And it's a little bit better now after the plate changes, so that's why I will build Shield Bash a little bit more. Okay, I'm gonna hurry up. Second Wind, pretty much very, very consistent rune. Helps your laning phase a ton. If you're into a champion like Set, who can't really hit you that often, or has to get in your face to hit you, Bone Plating is a good option to take. Conditioning if it's a easy lane, and you're confident that you don't need Second Wind. But Second Wind is mostly just 90% of the time you want to take, 95%. Overgrowth or Unflinching. Take Overgrowth if they do not have too much tenacity, or you're planning on building Mercury Treads. Revitalize if you have lots of enchanters, lots of healing and shielding. And Unflinching if you need a little bit more tenacity. As for secondary, Biscuit Delivery, Approach Velocity, very solid. Or you can go Biscuit Delivery and Cosmic Insight. Both are very solid options. And then for your runes, attack speed, and then armor and health. You kind of always want to take the health scaling unless your top damage, your enemy top laner and the enemy jungler are the same damage type and they do a lot of it. So for example, enemy top laner is Riven and enemy jungler is Jarvan. These champions do a lot of AD, so I would go double armor in this case. But if your top laner is like Aatrox, who does a bit of magic damage now, and their jungler is someone like Rammus, then I would go armor and then a health rune. Because Cassante does scale a little bit better now with health, it reduces his Q cast time a little bit more. And if you just want to brain off and just go whatever, this is the rune page to go for literally any game. You'll be fine going this. But yeah, that's about it.